Welcome to the Proptech Podcast. It's Kylie Davis here, and I'm delighted to be your host as we explore the brave new world where technology and real estate collide. I passionately believe we need to create and grow a sense of community between innovators and real estate agents, and sharing our stories is a great way to do that. So the aim of each episode in the Proptech Podcast is to introduce listeners to a Proptech innovator who is pushing the boundaries of what's possible, and we'll explore the issues and challenges raised by the tech and how they create amazing property experiences. So my guest in this episode is Aimee Engelmann, CEO and founder of outsourcing business Beepo. And Beepo has a lot of clients both in the real estate space and the Proptech space. So we're going to explore that territory where Proptech and outsourcing and real estate collide. So let's dive right in. Aimee Engelmann, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Kylie. Super excited to join you today.
Thank you. So look, at every Proptech podcast, we ask, what's your elevator pitch? So what is the Beepo elevator pitch?
Great. Well, Beepo helps high-growth businesses supercharge their output and their profitability by tapping into the world's best talent. And as you mentioned in the intro, we do focus on the tech sector, and we also focus on the real estate sector. So we're basically partnering to help those businesses achieve their goals.
Cool. So what are the links between those two from your point of view?
Well, I guess the two things that are common with those industries is that they're both high growth, and in our business we've had exceptional growth in both of those sectors and assisting both of those sectors. I think what's interesting about, how tech is helping the real estate industry is that there's been, a real need to bring in new tech into the real estate industry. And so now is the time where we're really seeing technology change the way that real estate businesses are operating. So that's really exciting for us because we get to help tech businesses launch to provide those services. And then we also get to see how that's changing the real estate business.
So how did you get into Beepo? Like what made you start it?
Yeah, it's an interesting story because if you told me 7 years ago that I'd be running a business in the Philippines, I would have said, oh, no way, Kylie, absolutely not. But basically, I had a marketing agency for many, many years, for about 7 years. And a particular time in that business journey, we had a huge downfall in our revenue through some external factors, and we were niched into the telco industry. And my agency at that time was really struggling. I was kind of faced with the decision of, do I wind it down and do I let all my staff go, or do I find a way to basically, change the way that it's structured to still be profitable? And that took me to the Philippines in 2013. And when I went there, I was just astounded with the talent. I expected it to be a lot of call center, taking and making calls. But as a marketing agency, I was actually interested in things like digital marketing and marketing support, graphic design, a bit of bookkeeping and administration support. So it actually became a tool to save my business from, at the time, was, going through a big decline, 22% decline in revenue in months. Yep. Ouchie, yeah. So it enabled us to keep operating, keep our staff in Australia, and just change the way we resource the business. So that was my exposure to the Philippines, and it had a huge impact for my marketing business. I then subsequently sold it and started to concentrate on Beepo.
That's fantastic. So you've been going for 7 years, you said. How long have real estate agents in Australia that you're aware of been outsourcing to the Philippines in particular?
Yeah, so probably some of the really early adopters and innovators. You look at kind of the Rental Express guys, now Little Real Estate, they were probably one of the first organisations. And I would say, Chris can maybe quote me on this and tell me whether I'm wrong or right. I would say that's probably around 8 years ago now, 8 years ago. And certainly when I went to the Philippines, they already had a fairly substantial operation. So they already had about 40 staff over there. So they were really one of the early adopters and paved the way for others to follow. Of course, many businesses have been, particularly banks and telcos, have had a lot of offshore staff. It's really been the last kind of 3 to 4 years where we've seen a trend of, a large majority of real estate offices considering offshore staff as part of their resourcing model.
Right. And so what sort of tasks are they outsourcing?
So in the property management divisions, lots of, processing that needs to be done in a PM business, tenant application processing, a lot of commercial support with simple checking and auditing of invoices, repairs and maintenance work. Then in the sales division, sales support work and lead generation and data cleanup and data mining. In finance administration, bookkeeping, even things like receivables and payables and payroll, trust accounting reconciliation, and then in marketing as well, roles like digital marketing and social media assistance and web development. So quite a broad scope, but I'd say the majority of agencies start with property management because of the real administration burden that comes along with a PM office.
And so how good are we at outsourcing? Like what are the main challenges that a real estate agent will face when they're outsourcing for the first time?
Yeah, it's a great question because it's not just a silver bullet that you turn a switch on
just
and everything.
Make the problem go away, send it to the Philippines.
That's right. So, the first thing that can be a bit of a risk or a concern is processes and an understanding of how a process is done.
Yep.
What you don't want to do is take a clunky process or an ineffective process and then take it to the Philippines because it'll just make it worse.
Yep.
So, the challenge is around being a business that's process focused. So if you're not a process focused business, it's actually not a good step. You need to kind of have some internal change management and change the way you operate before you outsource. The second challenge can also be a little bit around the adjustment that the Australian team needs to make to work with remote staff and particularly remote staff in the Philippines. So there's a lot of, preconceived ideas that people have around Philippines talent because they've been called by a bank or a telco and they might have a bit of a negative connotation about that. And so the Australian team really have to go through a bit of an adjustment period to get that working relationship right.
And so why would you choose outsourcing to the Philippines over outsourcing to another country?
Yeah, the Philippines, the trend has really been a switch into the Philippines away from other areas like India because English is their official language. So, Filipino kids go up through school going through the schooling system speaking English. Often their parents are bilingual, so their parents will speak their local dialect as well as English. The accent is neutral, and the underpinning system and values is very Christian, and also there's a lot of similarities with the American market. So very Western, like a very Western kind of thinking and paradigm, which helps. And just great service culture. Very, very service orientated. Nothing's a hassle, open to learning new things. We don't get that situation in the Philippines of a task being above someone. Sometimes in Australia, someone will say, "Oh, I don't want to do that for 8 hours a day. Like I'm too good for that."
There's no millennial thinking.
So it is a great environment to just have people who are motivated and happy to get in and get the job done.
Cool. And so we talked about where you need to improve. It sounds to me like the decision to outsource, the first thing you need to do is actually examine your own leadership or management style. Would that be correct? And maybe work on that first.
100%, Kylie, 100%. And it's one of the things when we talk to real estate agencies, sometimes we have to say, no, you're not ready. And here are some things you might want to consider before you start. So absolutely. And some of the characteristics to look for is the team good at making change? So, a great example is when have you introduced new software or new technology into the business, and how easy or hard was that for you, and how did your team embrace that change? Because if an office has made a change to a new piece of software and they've been able to integrate that successfully, update their processes, then that's a good sign that they're also going to be successful when they look at hiring offshore staff.
Right. So if you need to be a highly process-driven business, how does that work with a fast-growing Proptech? Because often they're kind of growing helter-skelter Step me through what that looks like.
Yeah, so we work with a lot of tech companies who are in that high growth phase. And for us, it's about understanding that that's their pathway and making sure that the staff that we hire have got that ability to move with them.
Mm-hmm.
So a great example is, looking for someone who might have a couple of years experience, who's young, super enthusiastic, really smart, university qualified, but we know that they're going to be able to stretch as that business wants and needs more from them. So it is common for the businesses that we work with to be in that high growth phase and want their staff to be able to do more in the future, and we recruit for that.
Let's just pause there for a moment and hear a quick word from our sponsors. As a real estate agent, you know you need to be doing more content marketing. But creating posts for social media, creating videos and reports is hard work, lots of hard work, and it takes time. So that's why you need HomePrezo. If you're a typical agent posting 1 or 2 social media posts a week, HomePrezo can save you between 75 to 100 hours a year. How many more properties could you sell if you had that time back? HomePrezo can help you create engaging, informative videos about how the property market in your local suburb is performing. Plus, it makes creating suburb reports, rental videos for landlords, and social media infographics an absolute piece of cake. If you can type in a suburb or type an address, you can create a Prezo using HomePrezo in just a few minutes. Listeners to the Proptech Podcast receive a 14-day free trial. Now that's twice as long as the normal free trial. So go to homeprezo.com.au and click the sign up button and use the code PROPTECH to get your extended free trial. Or click the link in our show notes. So the tasks that you outlined before around property management and sales support and digital marketing, they're all kind of very busy but possibly low skill kind of jobs. How is the rise of technology changing or affecting that? Because what we're hearing is that the AI is going to be doing a lot of these tasks. What is technology an enabler or a disruptor for outsourcing?
Yeah, great question. So where we focus our staff and where we really aim to be is we want to enhance what our staff are doing by using new technology. So I'll give you an example. As a tool becomes available to the Australian market and we know of it and it launches, we generally look to work with a client to trial it straight away. So sometimes we're in a situation where we might have one client using a tool and another client not using a tool, and we can actually see the metrics and compare what's happening between those two clients and look at the effectiveness. And even in some cases, we've been able to provide feedback back to that Proptech company and say, hey, we've been using your tool. Here's some things that we've found. If you could do X, Y, Z, this would actually really help us be more efficient in supporting you. So, it does mean that we need to change the tasks that those offshore staff are doing. So their role will never stay the same because tech is going to change what they do, but we need to be able to support them and train them so they can make that change.
Right. So I guess there's 2 elements in there, isn't there? There's the feedback for a Proptech on how effective their product is or where their product needs to adapt or change a little bit to be really robust. But then on the other hand, if I'm using Beepo as a real estate agent and I'm also getting the benefit of all of that experience into my business, even without the need to test some of the software. Would that be correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And, where we are right now is we're actually working with some clients to say, hey, we've seen this working. This is where it fits. This is how your relationship with your Beepo staff can change. We're actually going to help upskill them to be able to do X and Y. And now we've got this tool that's going to do A and B. So, it's really exciting for us because we're starting to lead that discussion in some cases and find out what works, look for similarities of business problems across the client base and say, okay, that worked for this client, so we know it's going to work for that client. Let's go and have a chat to them about how things might change. It's a journey. It's not, let's launch this next. Hey, let's do a bit of a demonstration, share some results and think about where things will head over the next few months.
Fantastic. So you guys could really be kingmakers of Proptech, sort of identifying the ones that are most likely to succeed based on, because you're kind of testing in a really amplified way, I guess.
That's true. And look, at the end of every tool, let's be honest, is a person. Tools,
true.
they don't run themselves end to end. So there are people that are using these tools. And so where a Philippines-based staff member can use that tool, it's more effective overall. And absolutely, in the early stages, we can give feedback because some of our staff have been working in the real estate industry for 6 or 7 years themselves. So they do have a really good grasp. Some are new and fresh, and we put them through training, but they're smart people who can give some real insights.
Yeah. So what are the trends in tech that you're seeing that's changing how your teams are working, Aimee?
Yeah, so look,
and you can name names. I'm curious to hear them. we can do shout outs.
I could name names except for that part of the confidentiality that is in our agreement.
Well, you don't have this. I'd still love to hear, like, if you've been working with some of the technology, like the startups that seem to be working quite well.
Yes.
Yeah, don't have to link them to clients specifically.
Sure. So look, I think in the startup space, the trends that we're seeing is about making sure that tech company has, firstly, a view and awareness of how Philippines-based staff members can help aid their growth. So in the early days, it's all about run rate and cash management, and we all know how hard it is to get through those first 2 years.
Oh, yes.
So it's about, an awareness of, hang on, I could maybe get a support development role in the Philippines. I might keep my senior dev in Australia, but I'll get some support dev roles in the Philippines, or I might get some functional testing or QA, or I'm about to start my marketing programs and ramp that up. I really need someone who can help with digital marketing implementation. So in the early days, it's about working out what's that next resource gap for that tech company, and then building an awareness of, well, if there's talent in Australia or there's talent in the Philippines, I can build a bigger team quicker in the Philippines, still keep employing in Australia for the strategic roles and get those simplistic roles going. So the sooner a startup tech company gets a hold of that and starts to utilise that talent base, the quicker they can achieve their goals. And basically they've got a better run rate because they've got more cash to work with. And, in functional areas, the kind of key or most popular, obviously, software development. And as I said, it's more that junior development. The senior roles still kept in Australia. Digital marketing, very popular. Customer care and customer support is another one. Administration support, and then also bookkeeping and accounting, which can certainly add up when you're paying Australian rates for bookkeeping and accounting. So they're the roles that we typically see most popular at the moment.
Right. And who are some of the technology startups that you're seeing being used in that way that you described before, that you're able to say, hey, we're seeing some great results with some of these startups or with some of these innovators?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, in the PM space, of course, all of the foundation core software tools, like the Property Tree and Property Me, they're all being, widely utilised, and obviously staff being certified where possible and up to date on the latest features. That's really important. So with the tools that we have, making sure that the features are fully trained and fully utilised.
Yep.
In new technology, so, an example where we've got staff who are using Rita by Air. We've got staff who are doing some testing with Realm on Claire.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, which is really going...
All the girls.
Yeah, that's right, Rita and Claire. So that's just two examples that are focused on that kind of really new, exceptionally new in the marketplace. They're still, in a way, formulating what their product set is and changing and morphing their product set. And so having those two being used by our staff and us being able to give some feedback and work closely is just, it's amazing.
Let's just take a short break, and now a word from our sponsors. As we all know, the problems of the world can always be solved with good company and good wine. And for a truly great wine, check out Smidge Wines from the McLaren Vale in South Australia. Smidge Wines has been rated 5 red stars by the James Halliday Australian Wine Companion since 2017. Whether you love a big bold Shiraz, a beautiful well-rounded Cabernet Sauvignon, or a Montepulciano, a Tempranillo, or a Fiano, check out smidgewines.com. Sold exclusively online and proud to be official wine of Australian Proptech.
Fantastic. So I'm really curious, though, to understand how AI and outsourcing and Australian real estate comes together. Like, so how does that play out? What's the AI doing? Then what's the outsourcing doing? And then what does that leave the agents back in Australia doing?
Yeah, great question. So, look, with the development of AI, you can see that a lot of core processes and tasks, as much as possible, can be done by technology. So simple queries, question and answer type scenarios, data mining, trigger-based data, bringing insights forward, and that will change dramatically. I think the next 3 years that will super accelerate. So, I foresee repairs and maintenance getting to a point very quickly where you could have AI completing from the beginning of the maintenance query right through to the end. Obviously, a tradie's got to come out and
do the job. Could all fall over there, but anyway.
That's right. But I can definitely see AI and that conversation right through to invoicing and reconciling the invoice all being done. So where does that leave a Philippines-based staff member? So there will always be exceptions. There will always be times where the technology either gets to a point where it stops, it ceases, it needs further help, or it needs further learning. And I see that really where a Philippines-based staff member who's already competent in that process, because they were doing it previously, to be able to step in and deal with the escalations. And then above that, if that staff member isn't able to resolve it, or maybe there's a certain monetary value that it's a really big repair, there's a lot of complex requirements, that's where things could go up to a property manager, for example. So I just think not dissimilar to the way that when offshore staff kind of came about, certain tasks were categorised. This is what we'll do offshore and this is what we'll do in Australia. It's just broadening that to 3 categories. What can be done by technology, what would get done by offshore staff, and what's the high value work that will only be done back in Australia. Contact with landlords, in the sales space, the direct relationship, obviously, working with the vendors. So, I think it just provides more and more work to be done and more work for the property management or the sales team to be out of their hands so they can just focus on the high value work that they should be doing.
And so I think that's where we're going to, isn't it? Like we're moving into that space where the AI is handling all the business as usual stuff. You've got humans, and I guess in your case, outsourcers that are handling the early exceptions, and then you've got the Australian agents or the Australian staff doing the real deep relationship and strategic leadership stuff that is truly growing the business and kind of pushing the busy work sort of just down and down the funnel.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it is a challenge for those who are in the real estate industry at the moment who are focused on process, who are really good at processes. Just doing. That's the challenge for anyone who is really good at that process space is, then do they reskill? Do they move to a relationship-based role? Or, what will their role become if they are doing the doing and it's process-orientated?
So this is really the beginning of a fundamental shift in how agents think and how they think about what constitutes their day and doing a good job during the day, doesn't it? It's going to be around not about how much stuff you did, but about what you actually achieved and what the outcomes of that work was.
Absolutely. And look at Inman, when we were at Inman in January, we heard from Keller Williams talking about their new technology supporting sales staff, that while they're in the car, they are talking to their digital assistant, their AI assistant, about who's next to call, updating records in the CRM. And they're doing all of this voice activated while they're driving from one appointment to another, so that their time is completely maximised on touching those vendors and those connections that they need to the extent that the AI tool is planning for them and telling them who they need to call next. So getting to the extent where their day is planned out by their AI assistant and they can just be super, super effective and productive on doing the relationship and focusing on the relationship piece.
So do you see a future where the AI will also be leading or instructing the outsourcing team?
Yes.
They might be better at it. Who knows?
Yes, to an extent. And I think, once the workflows are really matured, we'll start to see, in a cycle of processes, tasks will jump between. They'll jump between the AI tool. They might go back to a person in the Philippines, might go to someone in Australia, back to the Philippines, and then back to the AI tool. So absolutely, it will be within any workflow. There could be multiple touch points between people and robots to get it done.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I mean, we had Sarah Bell on the show recently, and she was saying that the future is a combination of human and robots. And in fact, the thinking is really that robots let us be more human, don't they?
Yes. Yeah. But huge challenge for, people in the workforce, not just in the real estate industry, but any industry, to think about how their job will change and how do they put themselves in a position to reskill or step up or move sideways. But the labour force in the next 10 years is going to change dramatically.
Fantastic. Look, Aimee, thank you so very much for your time. It's been fascinating to explore that area where technology and outsourcing and Australian process and real estate all really kind of collides.
Thank you, and fantastic. Well done on launching the podcast, Kylie. It's going to be very, very successful. I can't wait to tune in and learn more as well.
Thanks so much, Aimee. Appreciate your time. So that was Aimee Engelmann, CEO of Beepo, an Australian business that helps both real estate agents and Proptech businesses outsource to the Philippines. And what a great conversation. I've been fascinated for a while now about this nexus between outsourcing and technology adoption, and I loved exploring that with Aimee today. In the interest of full transparency, I am a Beepo client. My digital marketing assistant, Jill Escudero, works at Beepo. Big shout out to the fabulous Jill, and as does the Home Prezzo team of Nico and Charles. But there is a real discipline in being able to work with an outsourced team. It requires the creation of strong processes and a vision and value for your business that you can articulate clearly and really embed into the day-to-day work that you do. I know from experience that it really requires you to unpack job descriptions and think through what you want those people to do on a weekly basis to add value to the business, and the clarity that it requires you to bring to your instructions and your intention. Because the truth is, if you cannot make outsourcing work for you, you're going to struggle in the race to adapt to new technology, because the skills required to outsource are similar skills to the ones you use to brief and set up AI. So I don't think it's a secret that some of the best real estate businesses out there, those that are adapting the quickest to the new AI options, were early adopters of outsourcing and have long been using it in their business. So if you want to do one thing right now that will help build your muscle to get ready for the AI revolution that's coming, start working now on processes that allow you to outsource your business. We've included information on how to reach Beepo in our show notes, but any kind of outsourcing, whether it's from Melbourne to Brisbane, Brisbane to the Philippines, India, wherever you want to go, but that discipline will completely change your leadership style and change how you run your business. Now, if you have enjoyed this episode of the Proptech Podcast, we would love you to tell your friends. Share us on Facebook or LinkedIn. And you can find us on Spotify, and we're now on Google Play. Thanks, Jill. So I'd like to thank my audio support, Charlie Hollins, the amazing Jill Escudero, and our sponsors, Home Prezzo, creating content and marketing from your data, and of course, Smidge Wines, official wine of the Proptech community. Thanks, everyone. Until next week, keep on Propteching.